colleagues. I am Senator Shanika Henson, representing Legislative District 30, here to present Senate Bill 889, Criminal Law Distribution of Students' Personal Identifying Information Prohibition. So this bill seeks to solve the very real problem of doxing that occurs for students. You can imagine that if a person gets a hold of your personal identifying information and they have the intent to harm, that this harm could be rippled and tripled if you are a student who's seeking to further your education. Colleagues, if you aren't familiar with the term doxing, it means the action or process of intentionally, maliciously publishing private or identifying information about a particular individual. We know that students are most vulnerable, facing that by classmates, outside sources, and internet trolls. For example, last December, the University of Maryland had 2 egregious doxing cases that led to death threats against University of Maryland students. Upon further investigation, UMD campus police confirmed that the state of Maryland currently has no anti-doxing laws. That puts us out of alignment with 19 other states that have anti-doxing laws, but we here in Maryland have not caught up to those other 19 states. The purpose of this bill is to prohibit a person or groups from distributing personal identifying information or images of a student enrolled in an institution of secondary education or an institution of post-secondary education with the intent or knowledge that the information would be used to harm the student, or with reckless disregard for the risks that the information will be used to harm the student. It makes the person who does this in violation of our law subject to a misdemeanor crime with imprisonment up to 1 year and a fine up to $5,000. This bill offers vital protections for our students and their sensitive information. Why do we need this bill? Maryland's current laws against cyber stalking and harassment have many gaps and simply don't go far enough. For example, Grace's Law was originally enacted in October 2013 to address the changing digital landscape, making the misuse of internet-based communications to intimidate or harass a minor a criminal offense. It was enacted in response to the tragic suicide of Grace McComas, a 15-year-old girl from Howard County, Maryland, who was cyberbullied relentlessly, and she wound up taking her own life sadly in 2012. Her parents, especially her mother, Christine McComas, advocated for stronger laws against online harassment and cyberbullying after discovering that Grace had been the subject of months of persistent online abuse through social media. In 2019, Grace's Law was strengthened, increasing penalties for cyberbullying and expanding protections for minors. Senate Bill 889 seeks to build on that great work of Grace's Law and provide protections for students in both secondary and post-secondary education. And Mr. Chair and colleagues, I believe that what you'll learn from the testimony as well is that this issue disproportionately impacts certain students who may be more vulnerable based on their identity, based on their ethnicity, based on their closely held beliefs. And with that, colleagues, I'll turn it over to my panel and ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 889. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Senator. And just as a public service announcement, thank you all for the folks that were here and who are advocating for the bill, holding up signs. We just typically don't allow that in committee because we'll have fat heads and huge signs. And so we encourage you all to definitely display those signs in the antechamber, take as many pictures, and put that on social media for your support for this bill. But just in the committee room, we kind of limit that activity. So thank you, though, for your advocacy. And move on to the next panel. Ms. Chaudhry.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, members of the committee. We want to first extend our thank you to Senator Henson for her leadership on this issue. My name is Zainab Chaudhry. I'm here today on behalf of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. We are the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. I wish that I was here today before you on an issue that was much more pleasant than the issue that we are here before you on. Maryland does have some of the strongest anti-bullying laws in the country, but unfortunately those laws, as Senator Henson mentioned, simply do not go far enough. There are existing gaps within these laws that need to be bridged. My organization tracks the prevalence of hate bias within our state, and across the state in 2024, our organization recorded over 600 incidents of hate bias incidents, discrimination, requests for assistance from community members, Muslims, Jews, Arab Christians, and Arab Muslims from across the state. And this is the highest number that we've ever recorded. And of this number, about 16% of these included incidents regarding cyberbullying and bullying of children, of students in both in secondary and post-secondary education. One of the things that really sets this bill apart is that it builds on, as was mentioned, on the Grace's Law legislation that was passed within our state. We currently have protections for minors, but we do not have protections for students in colleges and universities who stand to be adversely impacted. Many of these students exist at the intersection of numerous marginalized identities, and those students deserve our advocacy, they deserve our voice, they deserve your support to help pass this legislation. If Grace was here today, she would be 27 years old. If Grace McComas was here today, she would be 27 years old. Her mother and her family deserve to have her here. Similar to Grace, every single student who we have spoken to over the last 2 years deserves to have the same protections. And it is unacceptable that our state currently does not have those protections. We have confirmed with University of Maryland Campus Police that our state currently does not provide protections, even for students who are facing death threats in circumstances beyond their control. And you will hear testimonies here today before you from some of those students, but I will share with you that many of those students, the vast majority of them, Jewish, Muslim, Arab, from diverse backgrounds, they do not feel comfortable and they do not feel safe coming forward. So I urge you to please pass this bill. Thank you so much. I know I went over my time. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ikram Abdu, and I am a student at the University of Maryland, College Park. I'm here today to express my strong support for Senate Bill 889, which seeks to protect young individuals from the harmful and dangerous impacts of doxing. We live in a world where almost everything is digital. Social media is not just for staying in touch, it is where we network, apply for jobs, express ourselves. But for some, it is also where they become targets. Doxing does not just expose information, it puts real people in real danger. No one should have to fear for their safety just because they have an opinion or express their beliefs. Disagreements should not turn into personal attacks, but doxing takes private details and weaponizes them, leaving people vulnerable to harassment, threats, and real-world harm. I know firsthand how devastating the consequence of doxing can be. Recently, I was falsely accused of an act I did not commit, and my full name was shared online alongside inflammatory allegations. As a result, I was subjected to an overwhelming wave of online harassment, including death threats and messages from people claiming they would report me to the university and contact my past employers. I was forced to deactivate all my social media accounts and wipe my digital footprint to the best of my ability. The person who made these false allegations reported me to the UMD Campus Police and to UMD Title IX, which led to an official investigation. After a thorough review, I was found innocent. However, instead of accepting the outcome, she retaliated by doxing me, publicly sharing my personal information online in an attempt to ruin my reputation and put me in danger. This led to even more harassment and threats, making me fear for my safety online and in real life. Sorry. Doxing completely upended my life. It put my safety at risk. It cost me job opportunities. It took a toll on my mental health, and it disturbed my education. I used to freely share my beliefs in real life and online, but now, like many young people, I hold back from sharing my opinions or engaging in informed conversations out of fear of my personal information. This bill is a crucial step in protecting individuals under 25. Can I stop? Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman and committee members, and thank you, Senator Henson, for sponsoring this bill. My name is Iman Shahadi. I am a current student at the University of Maryland, College Park. As a community member actively engaged in advocacy, I've seen how doxing is a real threat to safety and leads to loss of employment opportunities, mental health struggles, and disruptions in education. Many young people fear expressing their opinions and participating in civic engagement because they know that their personal information could be exposed and used against them. This bill provides a crucial protection and safeguards for students from those malicious attacks. Holding perpetrators accountable through this legislation sends a very clear message that weaponizing personal information to intimidate or harm others should and will not be tolerated. I have had personal instances of threats of doxing. I have not been doxed myself and have had close friends and family members been fully doxed online and have it lead to threats of harm and death threats in very similar situations. And especially people's information being posted on online forums for other people to further harass and send intimidating messages to. I urge the committee to support this bill and help create a safer and more secure environment for young individuals across our state. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and members of the committee. Thank you, Senator Henson, for sponsoring this really crucial bill. My name is Kimberly Suardi. I'm CARE Maryland's Outreach Coordinator, and I recently graduated from the University of Maryland in College Park. As a recent graduate and activist, I'm here today to express my strong support for SB 889. This bill is crucial to protect our youth from the detrimental effects of doxing. I've personally witnessed the severe harm that doxing can inflict. Friends of mine have been targeted simply for speaking out on social and political issues, their personal information, such as their home addresses, phone numbers, and workplaces being exposed online without their consent. And as a result, they face relentless harassment, including death threats and online abuse that made them fear for their safety. Many young people fear expressing their opinions or participating in civic engagement because they know that their personal information could be exposed and used against them. No one should have to live in fear because their private information has been weaponized against them. Doxing is not just an invasion of privacy, it is a form of intimidation that silences voices and puts lives at risk. I urge you to please support this bill to help protect people from being targeted, threatened, and silenced simply for existing or expressing their own beliefs. SB 889 is crucial to step in ensuring that individuals have legal recourse against this form of digital harassment and that those who engage in doxing are held accountable. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Questions from the committee for this panel? Senator Sidnor.
Thank you very much. Am I as well? So I'm looking at page 3, lines 23 and lines 25, where it talks about information or images used to harm. And I'm wondering, what does use to harm, what are we trying to capture there?
We are balancing free speech and a person's right to communicate information, even information that we might find that's sensitive information, but it's not covered when it is the malicious intent that's there and when that information is used to harm. So the use to harm standard is what gets us around balancing the rights of the person who is the communicator of the speech and the rights of the person that are harmed. The language of suffered harm is not dissimilar to other parts of our code where something becoming a crime is the result of the harm that results, where on its face, if it's done but there is no harm, then there is no criminal liability. So here, that's what the designation of harm is designed to flesh out.
So Joe Schmo hates dogs. I put this online, but I sent it to a group of students who I know love dogs. Joe Schmo starts getting emails and all sorts of comments about his hatred for dogs. Would I be in violation? Because I said find Joe Schmo on Alamo Street. He hates dogs, and I love him.
So I think one of my panelists wants to respond, but in addition to, and if the chair will permit 2 responses, in addition to that, it would be a determination of harm there. If people contacted Joe Schmo and said, I disagree with you, I really like animals, even though you don't, what you would be looking at is that sort of communication with him that harasses, that annoys, that sort of communication that causes a harm to him. If there's some sort of detriment, let's say he loses a job because of that, or he suffers mental unwellness because of that, or some other discernible harm that could be proved in court, that's when that communication would cross the line from simply being one to another to something that's harmful.
And that's why I was trying to understand harm, because I know many of us have received all sorts of messages from people online, and we've had them people saying, you know what, maybe it was a racist comment or something that was put out there. Let's find out where he or she works, and we're going to contact their employer. They've lost their job. There was a harm there. If that person was a student, I'm just trying, and I know when I initially heard about this bill, I was having an internal struggle with trying to understand and doing that balancing of the First Amendment and also trying to deal with the harms that I know doxing causes. So that's what I'm still kind of trying to tease out and understand with the question. So if that person who wrote that racist comment, the individuals who then went online because we found out this was a student, that they violated this proposed law?
So it would depend if the comment were racist and it also included their personal identifying information, and it was being exposed in that comment, and then as a result of that personal identifying information or that image being shared, that person was harmed and that person was a student, then under your analogy, that's correct, that actor would be subject to criminal liability under the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hi, thank you for letting me talk today. My name is Rachel Turner Seward. I am an IT employee for the U.S. House. I'm here today to express my strong support for SB 889. This bill is a crucial step towards protecting young individuals from dangerous impacts of doxing and ensuring that there are structures in place to hold perpetrators accountable. I wanted to share a personal story from my own experience with doxing. When I was 18 years old as a college student, I sent a private message to a friend, and without my knowing, that message was posted online with my personal information, with all of my family and all of my professors tagged to this message. And I remember the moment, my mom called me and told me what happened and that she saw this, and just world-shattering horror as, I realized all of my professors saw it too. This majorly impacted me mental health-wise, as well as within my college education. This was right at the beginning of my time in college, and it was pretty traumatizing. I was very lucky, and I'm very fortunate that my family stood by me and offered me love and support. I still have a physical letter my aunt sent me, saying that they love and support me even through this. But this could have easily been something much more traumatic and much more dangerous. And it's also, this was 12 years ago. It's only easier now for these things to happen. So yeah, I support SB 889, and I urge you to do too.
Good afternoon. My name is Noor Dawood, and I am a student at River Hill High School. I'm here today to express my strong support for this bill, which seeks to protect students and young individuals from the dangers and severe impacts of doxing. In today's digital world, a person's information is more accessible than ever, and young people especially are vulnerable to having their private details exploited maliciously. Doxing, which is internationally disclosing someone's personal information without their consent, can be used as a weapon for harassment, intimidation, and even physical harm. Unfortunately, students and young professionals, particularly those involved in advocacy, journalism, or public discourse, are frequent targets. As a student and member of my community, I have witnessed firsthand how doxing can severely and majorly impact someone's life. Several people I know have been doxed, and the consequences have been devastating, ruining reputations, limiting career opportunities, and in some cases, leaving individuals fearful for their safety. These experiences have caused many students to become hesitant or outright fearful for expressing their opinions or participating in public discourse because they know their personal information could be exposed and used against them. This bill is crucial because it provides the necessary protections for an individual under 25, ensuring that young people can engage freely in civic life without having the fear of having all their information leaked. It would give them the peace of mind to express themselves, knowing that there are legal protections in place to prevent their personal information from being weaponized. The fear of doxing is not abstract. It's a very real issue that affects students' mental health and well-being. Many are afraid to use their constitutional rights or to stand up for their beliefs, as they are worried that in doing so they could put their personal information at risk. Passing SB 889 would send a strong message that Maryland stands with its young people, ensuring that rights to free expression and safety are protected. I urge the committee to support this bill and take an important step in creating a safer environment for young individuals in our state. Thank you for your time and consideration.
I'm Shelley Cohen Fudge. I'm with the DC Metro chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace, which represents Montgomery County and PG counties, as well as DC and Northern Virginia. We fully support this bill, and we thank Senator Henson for introducing it. Doxing is a serious form of harassment. It's intended to intimidate and harm someone online. It can be very cruel, as some of the other folks here have spoken about. It can escalate into stalking and threats to the physical safety of the victim and result in very serious emotional distress to them. It particularly impacts youth and has become increasingly prevalent in Maryland's high schools and on college campuses. Students who express support for pro-Palestinian freedom and human rights are particularly targeted for doxing, including Jewish students, among others, who criticize Israel's policies. If enacted, we believe this bill would provide protections for those under 25 years old from doxing, and thus would go a long way to safeguard them from being targeted by vicious doxing perpetrators. Thank you.
Excellent. Good to see you, Shelley. Questions from the committee? All right, come on up. Who else is here to testify in favor of the bill? Is anyone else here? Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Laura Wilt. I'm a Chief Juvenile State's Attorney in Frederick County, and I'm here expressing support for this bill, 889, on behalf of Frederick County and the Maryland State's Attorneys Association. I have my testimony, I believe, will demonstrate that this bill fills a gap in a slightly different way, which allowed, we had a situation which allowed an individual in our community to use the names and photos of 5 young girls to open over 75 different accounts online. He opened Pornhub sites. He opened repeated social media accounts and websites. He used their name. He used their images to falsely act in their name online to engage in sexually explicit conversations, to talk about sexual liaisons. He used their names and images to promise pornography exchanges, all with reckless disregard for the impact that it would have on these girls. These 5 girls and families have spent countless hours and a lot of money trying to get these websites taken down. Still, their names and likenesses have accounts open on OnlyFans and other porn sites. For example, their name and likeness is out there with, the caption, "Lover of all things kinky." These girls have been contacted because these are their real names. So men have tracked them down on their real accounts, reached out to them, and tried to follow up on these relationships. They have been scared to be alone out because they're waiting to be contacted. The current law prescribes identity theft, but only if done for financial gain. So in our situation, this person used their identity for their own gratification with reckless disregard for what it did to these girls. So I thank Senator Henson and express our support for this legislation. I would, if I could, Chairman, I just wanted to note that one of the victims of this crime, Rachel, submitted a letter. She drafted it, and she submitted it under the wrong bill number. So it was under 905, so I don't know if
Okay.
I could read a couple paragraphs, or I could ask you to reference
We'll make sure that it gets into the bill file.
I'm sorry?
We'll make sure that it gets into the bill file.
It was under 905, and it was from Rachel.
Okay, noted. Battaglia?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
She's-
Thank you very much.
It's here. I have her sign up favorable with amendments. Rachel's obviously not here, though, right? Is that right?
That's right, she's
Okay.
not here. She thought she did it wrong, so she didn't come.
Okay, excellent. Well, we have it. We have it, so thank you for
All
that.
right, thank you.
So Senator West and Senator Sidnor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really love this bill, but my only concern is whether it sweeps too broadly. So I look at the list of things that constitute personal identifying information, and it says it includes a person's name and telephone number. So if I'm a high school student and a friend of mine says, gee, I'd like to call so-and-so up and ask her for a date, do you have her telephone number? And I attach to my return email the card from my contacts that has her name and telephone number. As I literally read the statute, it looks as if I have violated the law by giving a friend her name and telephone number. I'm
we have
sure you
to
don't
prove
mean that to be
intent.
the case.
We have to prove intent. In this statute, you have to prove that you did so without the express permission, with the intent that it be used to harm them, on page 3, or with reckless disregard for the risk. So all that intent there would make that not a crime.
I see. Oh, and if my friend were in turn to share that posting with others, you don't think it still wouldn't cross the line into reckless disregard?
I don't see any intent there. So in my case, I would have to, our scenario, he created all these websites, used their name, used their picture for his own gratification.
And no question, yours is the example you gave is terrible.
Yeah,
I'm just trying
I'm
concerned about maybe it sweeps too broadly in other areas where we got to worry about unintended consequences of language we use. So that's what I'm trying to wrestle with.
I think that reckless
But I see your point.
disregard would make that a very hard case for me to even argue. How could I even argue that that was used with reckless intent?
Got you. Okay, thank you very much.
So I have a constituent who testified in support of this legislation. Yes. There's a website called Canary Mission that I believe many of the proponents, they may have found themselves on. Are you familiar with this website?
I'm not, I'm afraid.
All right. This website, I was to read the About Us. It says their mission is to document individuals and organizations that promote hatred of the U.S., Israel, and Jews on the North American college campuses and beyond. And it goes on. And right on, you go right on the first page, and there are pictures of a number of, just scrolling through, students with their club affiliations, their university affiliations, which I'm assuming is probably the impetus to this bill.
It does sound like that.
But the question that I have, again, it has their photos and essentially gives a dossier on each of these students and their activities that would have landed them on it. When I look at this, I'm wondering, going back to lines 21 through 25 is, trying to prove the intent. And I'm asking you as a prosecutor, if you were to see this type of website and this bill, if it was law, how do you go about proving intent or knowledge that the that the personal identifying information or image will be used to harm the student.
Well, me personally, I would look at the date that they posted that information and what else was on the website at that time. So when they were posting it, what was the other content? What was the purpose of that website? How can I show that it was clear that that website was made to target? So I have to look at what's publicly available on that website, use that information to show that was reckless. If you put that up there, seeing all the rest of the negative targeting content, if I'm understanding you correctly, I would have to bring in more than just you put the information out there. I would have to show the totality of the circumstances.
And I think I'm probably, at this point, with the way the bill currently is, I'm probably close to where my colleague is. I get it. I don't like what's happening to the students, but I also don't want to have a bill go forward and just kind of have these unintended consequences of capturing people that we don't and doing something that's possibly that violates the First Amendment.
Right. What I can tell you is that without that reckless disregard, we would not be able to help. We were not able to help these girls the way we should have, because we had someone who put it up for different intent. To prove someone's intent, what's in their head at the time they put it up there, is very hard. But if I can show what else is on that website, what is going on, what he knew at the time, can I show to a judge that there's reckless disregard? And there's probably, hundreds or thousands of cases out there that tell a judge what I have to prove to get to that level.
And I'm assuming with the current language of the bill, it's not necessarily just the initial poster, it's any reposters and the like as well that get captured under this language.
So I, as a prosecutor, can't use those additional things to show their intent, but I can show the harm that came to the victim as a result.
But no, what I'm asking is, I'm the original poster or creator of this Canary Mission website. My intent is to get after those people that I've put on the website. Senator Weston takes my website and starts sending out the link and says, look at this particular student. Is he now implicated under this legislation? I'm fully within it.
Right, he's sending it out.
To get him as well, right?
Well, if he's sending out their personal information in particular, and saying, look at this, I mean, I think he needs to, I think I would get to specifically what did he send and was it targeting someone?
Thank you very
Just sending
much.
a general link, I don't think rises to that level.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, sorry to come back again, but I'm noticing we have present with us a number of high school students. And I'm not so old that I can't remember being in high school myself. And in those days, I can recall that there were members of our class who did their best to tease, bully, antagonize, embarrass other members of the class. Now, in those days, we didn't have the internet. And I'm hard-pressed to think what they would be, if I were back in high school today, with internet available. I'm assuming kids haven't changed. Still, when you're at that age, there are people in the class who like to bully and tease and intimidate and embarrass other members of the class. So when I was in high school, I would not have wanted those people who did that to be indicted and maybe go in prison for a year or subject to a $5,000 fine. I would have liked the school to have found out who they were and disciplined them in the school, but not in court. And I guess my concern about the bill and it spreading too widely and capturing people unintentionally who we really don't want to capture is that literally as I read the bill, it would have covered the people in my class way back when who engaged in bullying behavior, but would have used the modern technique of the internet to do it rather than the old technique of whispering and embarrassing stuff behind your back. And I'm not sure if you have any suggestions as to how we could amend the bill in order to make sure that high schoolish bullying behavior was not picked up by this in a way which would incriminate high school kids who we really don't want to incriminate.
And in my case, it was high school kids. And, you know, it was, again, not to harm these girls, but with reckless disregard. And there's no crime that covers this at all. It made his actions completely, we couldn't even have an officer send letters. They sent letters, but we couldn't allege a particular violation of a law. So at this point, this action is completely, like you said, you hope there would be some consequences. There couldn't be under the current identity theft statute. So your question, I don't know if the senator has thought about that issue or addressed that issue, whether it needs to be narrowed. I feel like the intent and the recklessness here and the harm is identified and clear enough that it's not overbroad.
All right, further questions from the committee? Thank you very much. All right, I believe that's it. All right, with that, that'll conclude the hearing for Senate Bill 889. We'll now move on to Senator Waldstreicher with Senate Bill 709.